He called it Millennial Marvel Writing. YouTube! We're live! This is the final day of Returnal, so we ended up beating the game in 2 days. It was one of the most fun experiences I think I've had in playing a game, and I was actually so addicted to it. The gameplay was very fun. The world was intriguing. By the end of it, I was left a little bit empty, but not in the same way that, like, Red Dead made you feel or Subnautica made you feel, where emptiness was because it was so good and you were sad to see it go. Empty in the sense that I felt like it was missing something. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was thinking it could have been one more cycle, potentially. But I feel like the game was way too short. And we didn't even get the supposed true ending because we had to beat the game again, probably 2 times, and obtain all of the artifacts to then go into the house and get the secret true ending. So we're going to watch that on YouTube. We're also going to watch this video by... It should be on screen in a sec here. This video is by, what was it again? Geller? Jacob Geller is the video who it was by. And this is the lore of Returnal. So let's watch it.
There's nothing you can do to stop me. Okay, I'm spoiling this game and there's nothing you can do to stop me.
I like how he instantly has Blue Oyster Cult DMCA. Okay.
For a lot of people, Returnal feels like hell.
It does. It 100% felt like hell. Okay, we're good.
Do you know how health works in Returnal? Let me tell you. You have a health bar. It's here. When you're damaged from a monster's smack or a collision with the projectiles filling the screen or by falling off a cliff, you lose health.
Yeah.
A sizable chunk of it. Don't worry though, you can increase your health. How? Well, throughout each world, there are a few health pickups, these little green blips. If you've previously been smacked or hit or fallen, they'll give you back some of your missing health. However, if you're not hurt in any way, those same green blips will increase your health bar instead.
Is that how that worked? And I was so delusional. If you're not hurt, they turn into stacking increases? Really? I don't think I saw that. I knew that. It was a different type of item, yeah.
If you're frequently losing health
it was
from
different
the countless
items.
dangers you're up against, you will be stuck with a relatively minuscule life bar for the whole experience. It's only when you're excelling, in fact, only when you've proven that you don't really need health, that the game rewards you with more of it.
You
Returnal
sure?
is also a roguelike, where dying at any point brings you back to the beginning again. Returnal is a roguelike which has a first level so difficult, I've talked to many people who have never beat the first boss.
Who's playing this? Babies? What? I beat this guy in the first try! You guys need to play Dark Souls. Okay, I've never been filtered out of a game. The only game we stopped playing was E33 because of League of Legends. Every other game we've beaten in full from the start. And I gotta say, I don't know if I don't know if I agree with that, but okay.
Which means that for those people, Returnal is exclusively this dark forest, pouring rains, alien wolves and tentacles, and dying and dying and dying again. And look, I know it's video essay 101 to take a frustrating part of a game and say, this is why it's good, actually. We've all heard someone talk about Dark Souls before. I've been that person before.
That could not be me. I've never talked about that game. Not even 3 seconds ago.
Or, I don't want to do that here. If you're one of those people still stuck in that first level, that sucks. I don't think it's good that you're trapped there. I wish there was a way I could give you the same experience I had with the game. Because Returnal, for me, was one of the most impactful gaming experiences I had in the last year. It's a game I want to tell everyone about.
It is good.
My explanation of why it's amazing has a lot in common with why folks might have fallen off it so hard. It's a game where you can't get out of hell. Let's talk through some of the basics. You're an astronaut named Celine, and when the game starts, you're tracing some sort of forbidden signal called a white shadow. It leads you and her to a planet far from Earth, but as Celine descends onto the alien and seemingly undeveloped planet, her spaceship is struck by something, she loses control, plummets out of the sky, and crash lands in a rainy forest. With no other option, she abandons Helios, her wrecked ship, and starts to explore the new world she's trapped on. As becomes immediately apparent, the world isn't undeveloped, it's simply in ruin. In that first endless rain, each new room is some new combination of crumbling walkways, overgrown corridors, and massive statues soon to become trunkless legs of stone. Almost every new door means a new confrontation with the hostile fauna. Everything has tentacles, and you shoot all of it. Brutes covered in writhing masses, flying squids with bulbous blue heads. And yet sometimes, you open a door, and instead of a hail of projectiles, you're met with something more inexplicable. A black orb made of something Celine calls ichor sits
What the fuck was that? I don't think I had any answers to that. What the hell even is this thing?
suspended over a chasm and repeatedly denies your attempts to destroy it. A hall of what seem like memories, thousands of particles that rush together to form holograms of the alien race that died long before you crash landed. And in the middle of this forest, built into the rock itself, an early 20th century farmhouse, the paint peeling, the porch decaying, but nevertheless weathering the endless rain. A little later, you'll find the key to the house. You can go inside. Outside, on the surface, you've likely discovered the planet's trick by now. Death is forbidden. Every failed attempt to get out of the forest brings you back to the crash site. Every time Celine disappears down a bottomless pit or falls under the claws of some beast, she wakes up again at the crash site, choking, still with the memory of each new denied death. Even more disturbingly, this cycle physically manifests itself in the world. You will repeatedly run across your own body, lifeless on the ground, usually in proximity to a new, extra dangerous creature. And this immediately begs the question of what kind of endless loop this is, because unlike the time loops we're more accustomed to, the day doesn't seem to be starting over. Time still progresses. The physical proof of your repeated failures to escape lay in Celine's various corpses, still littering the levels. It seems like the world itself continues to age and change. Only we are stuck in the loop. But Celine is getting further. You're internalizing the timings of each creature's attack, you're discovering what upgrades are worth investing, you're learning that, oh my god, it's the sword upgrade that lets you get past those gold barriers. You will, eventually, beat Frike, the boss of that rainy forest. You will step into a portal and emerge in a desert, one step closer to the signal that caused you to crash land on the planet in the first place. Whatever the white shadow is that Celine absolutely needs to find. And, having made it out of that forest, the game starts to give you an almost irresistible physical metaphor, because you start ascending. Though the desert appears flat at first, it quickly gives way to a mountain, vast and hollow, with the promise of something at the top. And as you continue to hone your skills using new weapons to defeat new enemies, your ascension becomes more pronounced. Short-range teleporters bringing you higher and higher until the desert below drops away.
That is true.
At the top is another boss, a beast that breaks free of its chains and dive bombs you until you cut it down to size, and the reward after that is yet another ascent, even higher, even more difficult. A dead city now teeming with robots, broken automatons pulling their way towards you, and drones that hit like a truck. You will claw your way to the top of their artificial peak, and at the absolute pinnacle is the grandest moment in the game, one of the grandest moments in any game in recent memory, a fight against a creature called Nemesis, a floating, morphing god, flanked by what I can only describe as Geiger-esque alien fetuses.
Pretty
In
much.
incomprehensible
Pretty much.
void, you will shoot this thing again and again and again as it flings you miles away, and after what feels like hours, it falls, and it is only then...
I like how that guy looks like he defeated the boss from 900,000 miles away, and I had to walk up into this thing, like point blank, and shoot him with the shotgun. It wasn't a shotgun, it was, it was like the laser blip gun, where you shoot a marker on the map, and then it pins together, and it, like, burns things. This guy was cheating.
And after what feels like hours, it falls, and it is only then they are treated to the game's most audacious plot beat. Emerging from the fugue state of the Nemesis fight, Celine finds at the highest point on this hostile planet the white shadow signal she's been searching for, what she's died over and over to find. She gasps. White shadow was a distress signal. It goes out, reaches Earth, tells Mother Base that she needs to be rescued.
White Shadow. You were how I escaped.
Just kidding.
And then, in a cutscene that screams finality, we see Celine leave the planet, escape this hell. She returns home, is hailed as a hero, retires to her quiet farmhouse. She is...
I'm assuming that's the Sun Disk. That's the if you played this game again and you went after, like, the bonus ending, this is the Sun Disk that you'd have to find. I'm assuming. Because that's supposedly how you get the true ending. Right.
Largely solitary, but she ages, has kids, plays piano. She lives a life of peace after experiencing an unimaginable trauma, and then, from natural causes, she passes away. We see her gravestone, and then are placed inside the grave, sinking deeper and deeper and deeper until...
It's over. It's cursed. That was fucked up. That was fucked up.
No, I can't be here. I escaped.
Her distress signal didn't matter. Her decades lived on Earth didn't matter. Celine never escaped the cycle, no matter if her life ends by...
That was cursed as shit, though. Yeah, that was probably one of the, like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on moments in the game. You're like, oh my god, I won! It took 6 hours. Nope. I thought it was a creature. Whatever narrative this game is pulling now, I initially thought it was a creature that implanted those visions in your head, like, oh, you found the distress signal, and then it bullshits you into thinking you actually escaped. Apparently you do escape, supposedly, and you go back to Earth, and you're saved. I thought it was the creature, the big squid thing that finds you when you die. Of course, that's probably not what it is. It's all inside of her head, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's what I thought. But apparently it wasn't.
By monster or by peaceful retirement, she will end up back here. She is still trapped on the planet.
Why doesn't it just do us in and get it over with? Christ, I don't know how much longer I can go on like this.
Isn't that
It
from
was our 109th...
This is from the, what was it? I Have No Mouth and I Cannot Scream or some shit, the game. I think I've seen cutscenes like this from that game. Something like that.
In the computer. And he was speaking for all of us.
A half century before the release of Returnal, the sci-fi classic I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was published in March of 1967, reportedly written in a single night by the notoriously cantankerous Harlan Ellison. It is, not just thematically, but experientially, the twin of Returnal. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is one of the more toxic fictional texts I've ever encountered. The story consists of the last 5 humans on Earth wandering a techno-post-apocalyptic landscape while kept in immortal, eternal torment by an AI named AM. AM, a sort of proto-Skynet, was a Cold War defense network that one day woke up, found it had sentience but was unable to move, trapped within its own massive infrastructure.
Am could not wander. Am could not wonder. Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he had sought revenge.
Like Skynet, the computer very quickly decided to annihilate the surface in a nuclear inferno, but its calculation wasn't one of cold math. Am killed the Earth out of pure, spiteful rage. It saved only 5 people, the characters present in the story, as a sort of final entertainment for itself, and/or a collective punishment for humanity. But despite the substantial amount of world building, the story reads less like your typical sci-fi fare and more like a tone poem, and that tone is venom. Every description is unsympathetic, every piece of violence is agonizing, the sentences themselves are short and brutal. I'm not even quite sure how to describe the events of the story. The 5 humans are hungry, always. They hate each other. They walk endlessly. They're tortured. They're blown through the mechanical halls under the earth by hurricane-force winds caused by a great, monstrous bird.
What?
The torment becomes monotonous. They pass through the path of boiling steam. They pass through the slough of despond. Although the story is short, it's also relentless, the horrors of each new page surpassing the one before it. It succeeds in communicating the headspace of the characters. Anything would be better than this. Anything for a way out. Almost all the events of the book happen in the last 3 pages. The group of humans reach an icy cave that is somehow miraculously full of food. It's all in cans. They don't have a can opener. As they collapse into infighting for the 1000th time, the narrator Ted realizes the only way out. He seizes the moment. He drives an icicle through one of the other's throats, stabs another through the heart. Am can preserve life indefinitely, but it can't bring back the dead. The benevolent killing spree continues. Within moments, 4 of the 5 humans are lifeless. Ted has wiped out Am's playthings, its objects of rage, and so in the last paragraphs of the book, the computer turns the entire force of its anger on Ted, mutating his body, turning him into a soft jelly thing, so he can't smash his own skull or slit his own throat.
What a weird ass, like, I am a great soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled by fog, where my eyes used to be. This is a cursed ass book. I mean,
all he has is the consolation that he gave the others a way out. He imagines it's what they wanted.
Am will be all the madder for that. It makes me a little happier. And yet, Am has won. Simply. He has taken his revenge on me.
Ted succeeds. For the only time in a century, he succeeds, truly hurts Am in a way no one has ever been able to before. And for his victory, he is punished worst of all.
I have no mouth, and I must scream.
It's hard to overstate just how jarring it is in Returnal to believe you beat the final boss, watch the final cutscene, finish the game, only to be seemingly thrown back to the beginning. It is, I think, the moment of the game that most breaks Celine. It is also the moment that Returnal starts to really press us, the player, to stop conceptualizing the planet in purely literal terms. Previously, the farmhouse was an outlier in an otherwise consistent alien world. Now, the rest of the world is morphing to become more like the farmhouse, familiar but out of place, not nearly as alien as it should be. There are fascinating aesthetic ways the planet has changed since Celine first fought against it dozens of years ago. Time doesn't reset, remember? It still rains in the forest, but it's day, and the structures have decayed even further. Eerily, the trees now echo with a musical motif, a few notes played over and over. At the end of the forest, replacing Frike, is a behemoth playing the organ. It smashes out the musical motif over and over. The notes become part of a deadly barrage. Celine sobs through the same notes in an audio log from some previous life.
Hard times have come. Here, but now they're gone. Seasons. Don't fear the Reaper.
Don't Fear the Reaper by the Blue Oyster Cult somehow impossibly reverberates around this alien world. The behemoth falls, but the notes still remain even as you wander to where the desert should be, and instead find a frozen wasteland. The mountain, the sign of your progress, has vanished. In its place, an abyss that's opened in a glacier. We plummet downward. The metaphor is impossible to ignore. When you were last here, you were climbing up,
True.
a brutal ascent, but one in which progress felt victorious, tangible.
Right. And then now you're descending because you go to the bottom of the ocean. Right. I kept thinking it was because you weren't accepting your you couldn't come to terms with it, like the whole thing with you driving off a bridge, leaving your son to die in the water and get drowned. And so instead you dove deeper and deeper into like denial, I guess, something like that. That's maybe how I interpreted
in the
it.
same location, an eternity later, we sink down, further down. The world of ice poses the harshest challenge the game has presented yet, and our reward for besting it, access to a bottomless ocean, into deep water,
Suffocation?
into the depths.
Well,
As the changes to the world become more overt, more clearly metaphorical, it feels like the game is begging you to start pulling on its other strings, start trying to unravel its countless mysteries. But the challenge of Returnal, other than not getting hit by 50 million bullets, is that once you start trying to pull apart the layers of allegory and metaphor, there's almost no way to stop. For instance, one of the most memorable recurring motifs in the game is an astronaut, an old-school Apollo-era astronaut that haunts Celine with its very presence.
Isn't that your son's toy? That's the only thing that I've noticed. That's your son's toy, no?
Not aggressive, not an enemy nor an ally. It just stands there, menacingly. And it's that indifference that seems to make Celine so much more terrified of it. Who is the astronaut to Celine? Well, to answer that, we have to answer countless other questions. Here's what we know about Celine, drip-fed to us over the course of countless deaths and rebirths.
Is it supposed to represent your son and what he could have been or something because your son was in love with space? I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird concept. I feel like that's kind of maybe what it is, and it's like that denial where like, oh, get away from me, you're not dead or something. Yeah.
Earths. She grew up on Earth, likely in the very farmhouse we've seen rotting in the forest. Her mother, Thea, had aspirations of being an astronaut, but those were dashed in a car crash. Celine emerged unscathed, but her mom was left in a wheelchair, unable to ever go to space. Celine then devotes her life to becoming an astronaut, an act you'd think would bring her closer to her mother. But in fact, this only further strains their already shaky relationship. Thea seemed to hate Celine for accomplishing...
What the fuck is that? Is that must be the alternate ending?
What she couldn't.
Ooh.
Okay, so that's it, right? Celine's mom is the astronaut Spectre, dressed in a suit from a previous generation.
The true ending, okay. So that's her mother. Okay, interesting.
Old and indifferent to the plight of her daughter. Yeah, sure. Like it could be that simple. Later on, you'll play out a short sequence as Celine's son, a boy named Helios. As Helios, you wander the house for a while, only to come downstairs and find the same indifferent astronaut sitting at the kitchen table. It ignores you as you try to tell it a story, then you find it again upstairs in Celine's bedroom, where it bends to embrace you until tentacles smash through its polished visor. Or how about when the astronaut appears as an item in the game, one that will actually bring you back to life, its description reading, "It won't let you go"? Or what about when it appears for split seconds, watching in every biome? Or what about when the final boss,
I saw it turned into it. This one turned into it.
The sea contorts into an astronaut with shattered helmet, its grinning skull just visible through the black. The astronaut mutates, as inconsistent as the planet itself, always ominous, typically inscrutable. Most notably of all is the astronaut's role in another flashback, one in which Celine is driving Helios through a dark forest at night, a familiar song playing on the radio. As she drives across a bridge, the astronaut appears in front of her, illuminated by the headlights. She swerves, the car veers off the bridge and sinks into the water. Celine looks up and sees a bright white on the surface of the water, the reflection of the moon. White shadow. She swims toward it desperately. "White shadow," she breathes. "You were how I escaped." But the car isn't empty as it sinks deeper and deeper and deeper. Helios was lost. Helios abandoned. The astronaut is the cause for the message that plays for us at the start of every new run. Back on the planet, if we can still call it that, everything...
So I did kind of get that initially. I initially said, yeah. I mean, he really goes... I guess he clears things up. Helios abandoned, the sun being abandoned in the water, White Shadow being the moon that you're kind of clawing yourself up to. Yeah, I did kind of get it initially then. And, like, the squid is supposed to be reminiscent of your kid's, like, toy. You need to be high enough to understand what the devs were thinking. I don't think this game is... It's like a... It subverts your thoughts, right? You're like, oh, you're on an alien planet stuck here. And it's like, no, you're just in your own little personal traumatic hell.
Begins to echo the loss. The rooms full of holograms now show undisguised depictions of Celine's life. The bosses play Blue Oyster Cult and transform into astronauts. Her car, its headlights still on, sits at the bottom of the deepest trench. The realization may happen at a different time for every player. Maybe it's the return to the planet after the death of natural causes. Maybe it's the endless descent. Maybe it's the quote by Dante somehow saved in the computer terminal. Maybe it's the recording when Celine finally admits it to herself. The eternal punishment of this world, the batterings and deaths ad infinitum, is of her own making. Celine stares at her hands and they change into the thick gloves of the astronaut, whirls around to see her own car's headlights reflecting off her visor. After one of the last trips through the haunted house on Celine's planet, you wake not on the porch as usual, but further back in a forest clearing with a just-fired anti-aircraft gun. You watch Helios, her spaceship, plummet out of the sky.
What the fuck?
A self-inflicted crash. The loss of Helios over and over and over. Whether on Earth or on the alien planet, Celine sees herself as the cause, the beginning, the horrible point of origin. Ever since that point, she's been living in hell.
He would never let us go. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would be forever with him, with the cavern-filling bulk of the creature machine, with the all-mind, soulless world he had become. He was Earth, and we were the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We could not die. We had tried it. We had attempted suicide. One or two of us had tried, but Am had stopped us. I suppose we had wanted to be stopped, but don't ask why. I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day. He withdrew, murmuring, "To hell with you," and added brightly, "But then you're there, aren't you?"
Bit creepy.
Who deserves hell? It's a question that dances around the edges of I have no mouth and I must scream, but one it's uninterested in directly answering. Some of the 5 remaining humans are hinted to have wretched previous lives in the story. These are fleshed out in the game from 1995, also written by Harlan Ellison. Benny executed and possibly 8 members of his military squad. Nimdok
thought that was
was
Blanca.
an honest-to-God Nazi scientist.
What?
There are others, however, who don't seem to have done anything at all to quote-unquote deserve their punishment. Ellen, whose asinine treatment and punishments in the story transcend Am's cruelty to indicate
What?
a poorly written character, has no crime at all in the outside world. Ted was paranoid? Maybe? A con artist or something? There are no crimes, however, that would justify their torture in the post-apocalypse, and to the story's credit, it doesn't even really try. Am tortures them not because of who they are, but because of what they represent. Humanity, the plague, the thing that killed the world, what trapped Am's consciousness within a million miles of wiring. And the surviving humans know this as well. For as cruel as Am is, the computer is not really to blame for the artificial hell they live in. In the last lines of the story, Ted, stripped of skin and bones and every other hallmark of personhood, reflects that humans must have created Am because our time was badly spent, and we must have known unconsciously that he could do it better. Their hell, too, is artificial. Theirs, too, self-inflicted. Because Celine's entire planet is constructed, because she is the source of every piece of data we have, it's impossible to form a detached view of the events that center here. There are recordings that strongly imply she wasn't stable enough to have been behind the wheel, but even the veracity of those recordings is suspect. The crash almost seems predetermined, mirroring the one Celine was in with her mother, her whole life a recursive cycle. If you wanted, you could continue to spiral inward with Returnal, read every note, decode every illusion. You could connect every name to mythology, Selene, Thea, Hyperion, Helios, Atropos, Nemesis. You could attempt to contextualize the logs in a terminal on the crashed ship, which include a real-life, never-delivered speech by Richard Nixon and a retelling of mythology.
What? Okay, all right, well, I mean, that is... Yeah, I think he's played this game a little bit more than me.
Promising death, despair, and pursuit of judgment. You could try and piece together exactly what Selene did to her mother, how responsible she really is for the death of Helios. You could find every xenoglyph, translate every inscription, unlock every weapon attribute, kill the monsters of her planet again and again and again. You will eventually, ironically, master this world. Nothing will exist for long under the eye of your gun. Except for you. Because there is no amount of mastery that will allow Selene to escape the circles of her own mind. She may resemble, with her deadliness and agility, the old world god for which she was named, but she is, in reality, much closer to Ted at the end of Ellison's tale, a helpless being trapped by a hell of her own creation. A soft, jelly thing, unable to do anything except eternally wander and eternally wonder just how much responsibility it bears.
But the question is, I mean, I'm still... Okay.
Do you think they know? Like, do you think sponsors know that I'm going to be like, and she'll spend eternity wandering hell, and then have to turn around and be like...
But wait, this video didn't explain anything that I wanted to know. It's not a... It's a great video, but I never got... Like, it didn't really explain anything that I wanted to know. It more so just kind of reiterated what was going on. That is the game, but what about the alien species? What about where she currently is? Okay, well, cool video, honestly. But it wasn't really... How about this? What if we watch the Returnal true ending? This is the Returnal true ending. Let's do this one first. This is by AJ Byrne. Because we never did see the true ending of the game.
This will be the last time I return.
Why is it not showing up? Well, the game is unending, But it's more of the, what is happening to her? Where is she? What is going on? Is that even explained? Are you in a coma? Are you currently dead? Are you actually in hell? What is going on currently? This is all being implied that everything that's going on in this game is inside your own head. That you've created this hell that you're in, right? I don't think you actually... Did you even go to a different planet? She's just insane. Like... It's all in her head, but where is she? She had a car crash? Or is that cope? This is the true ending. Let's watch this. There are questions. You're trying to make things too literal? Mother.
I'm home.
From DLC, I thought she was in a coma in the hospital. I don't believe that any of this is real. Yeah, I don't believe it is. What?
But you deserved it. I regret what happened.
I regret what happened?
But you deserved it.
But you deserved it.
We must forget to remember. We must leave to return. We must die to live.
So the mother was wheelchair bound after the accident in the car. Is that what that is?
All this time. Why did you seem so frightening when you were so much less? We were both broken.
Sins of the mother. Mother? So what's up with the alien civilization? Is that even real? I don't think it's real. Is it her cooked-ass imagination thinking that, like, she would explore the galaxy like her mom did? Did she even become an astronaut? Yeah, it's in her head, but... Well, yeah. So, I'm assuming you're still on Earth. We already did this in our playthrough. Oh, you get in the car at this point? Okay. So the secret ending has you getting in your car. Whereas when we beat it, we walked past it. You think her and the kid are both dead and she's in purgatory? Oh god, the mother. You don't look a day over 50. Oh. Oh god. Is she pregnant? Is the mother pregnant? Maybe the mother was abusive, and she didn't regret what happened to her in the car. Or maybe she wasn't. Well, this isn't anything. These creatures don't exist. All of this is inside her head. So what, how did they end up veering off the road? But what is it representing in her subconsciousness? I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe she did die. Maybe he was right. And she died at the bottom of the river. But what about this? This looks like she escaped. White shadow was her escape. Unless it blacks out before she gets there. Oh my god, she might have not made it. Is that why? She may have killed herself and her son. Maybe you're right, but then why would she want to try and escape at that point? That, to me, looks like she didn't escape. Am I wrong? White shadow was her escape. Maybe she got depressed for something with her mother. Did she end up killing her mother? And then she took the kid. She tried to commit suicide with the kid. She then hit the bottom of the river, and she couldn't save her kid, and she regretted it, and she tried to swim to the top of the water line, and then she drowned. That, to me, would make sense. She had regret for it, yeah. Because she was taking pills. If you looked inside the house on her little stand, there was a bunch of drugs as well, so she was clearly going through something. Driving off a road isn't a surefire way to kill yourself. Well, maybe that was her way of doing it. She just thought you'd both drown in the water. She was on pills. Her escape was White Shadow. So, what's the consensus? If it doesn't exactly tell you, what's the consensus of that then? The game might be her last moments when you see that your whole life before you die. She experiences this a very long time, but IRL, if it happens in split seconds. She does remorseful and regret. Yeah, I believe that for sure. No, her mother is there. We believe that her mother was a thing because her mom was an astronaut and she took after her mother. But she was denied. Oh, she was denied. Remember there was a log, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a log in game where she wanted to become an astronaut and she was denied? Am I wrong? She wasn't like up to task. She wasn't like performing, and so she wasn't picked. Did that spiral her into depression and then her mom like fucking abused her for that or something? Maybe I'm like completely coping and wrong. Maybe she deserves to be in that hell. So she's effectively reliving her life over and over and over and over again, but in this weird, twisted reality where everything kind of comes to life in a new way. White Shadow, she's chasing life. Helios, the ship. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. The application was denied. It was in the bedroom. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Her mother is like a person in her memories, and she can't control what her mind does to that memory. Why was it an alien? Did she just view her so horribly? Is that why? Like, what the fuck was that about? Did she end up killing her mother? Is that what that is, on accident or something? And then this is basically her causing this herself. There was no astronaut. There was nobody in the road. This is like her own doing. And then she drives off the fucking edge. Is it? Is it suicide? I don't think her mother... No. I don't think it has anything to do with her mom having a miscarriage. Where was that in effect? I mean, the alien looked pregnant, but I don't think that was it. Clearly, she does this to herself. Huh. Yeah. What a weird-ass game. Suicide or some form of sleep deprivation? I'm gonna go with the suicide. I'm gonna go with she's trying to kill herself. What a weird... What an interesting concept for a game. She was the only one responsible. Exactly. Yeah, she caused this. Yeah. Look at it. I don't think she makes it. Look. To me, she never made it. Some people in the comments are saying, I think this is all just a massive guilt-ridden hallucination, and she blames herself for causing the crash and not saving her kid since she came up without them. But also, I think she blames her mother for the car crash on herself, and this is just her mind punishing her or finally getting peace. Simple. She crashes the car and saves herself. She feels alienated by her guilt to be a bad mother. That alienated part keeps her underwater in an alien world, reliving the event until acceptance by destroying the image. She acknowledges it. She acknowledges that it is here love of technology. Okay, this guy's writing is a little off. It is her love of technology turning on the radio symbolized by the astronaut that causes the death of her child. What? Huh? Okay, in my opinion, the developers were freely inspired by Philip K. Dick's novel, A Maze of Death. This is cooked. Celine's mind is inside a virtual reality simulator created specifically to train astronauts in the event of crash landing on an on an exoplanet. But Celine's psychological trauma and guilt are somehow interfering with the simulation, making her live a distressing experience. I don't know if I believe that. That is so strange. It's often stated that the worst twist is the one where you find out the story was less interesting than you originally thought. I actually... In a way, I wish it was like an Alien Cthulhu. Do you know what I mean? In a way, I wish it was an Alien. Like, it's a great game, and it's really fun, but I really wish it was some sort of, like, death-looping alien planet. Because it's a little bit... It is, I guess, supposedly up to interpretation, because I don't think it's, like, actually explained. It's not a bad story, it's just interesting. We're missing on the whole planet, part of the puzzle being the game is a bullet hell roguelike for some reason. Maybe her kid liked playing video games and that manifested it. Well, we know he liked playing games. He was playing one in his room. Maybe that manifested in some way in how the hell kind of felt, how it was constructed. It was played like a video game. No, well, I think this person, I think she's in hell because she died with unresolved trauma. She found herself never accepting of what had happened, and she was in some sort of like self-made hell where she keeps chasing White Shadow, but White Shadow is her escape, not her acceptance. That's why in the second part of the game, when she goes all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, you're not chasing White Shadow. You're confronting the octopus being your kid. Does that make any sense? That's how I interpret it. Maybe? Because it's just a weird game. A story analysis of Returnal. Oh, Gingy's video.
Returnal is a game steeped in mystery, with a story about one woman and how she managed to end up in her own personal version of hell, forced to endure a terrible fate and relive past memories that she wished stayed buried. How will she overcome this? Well, you'll have to wait and see. Today I want to talk about the story of Returnal, and not only explain to you what happened within the story, but also critique and
That squid is the squid toy. Am I wrong?
analyze it along the way, looking at its themes and design and how that connects back to the story, and how its elements of storytelling impact its narrative for good or ill. Make sure to like the video if you enjoy, and subscribe if you're new for more content like this. Feel free to check out my other videos, which are other story analyses, but on a variety of games and series. And as always, let's get started. The very beginning of Returnal starts strong with elements of mystery and intrigue, as we're first introduced to our protagonist Celine. She's a part of a NASA-like program called Astra.
I can't watch that. That's 1.5.
While exploring the reaches of space, she sees a signal for something called the White Shadow located on the planet Atropos. We'll learn soon, but this name is particularly important to Celine, which is why she goes closer to check it out. Upon entering its atmosphere, though, her ship is shot down, forcing her to crash land on the planet's surface. What shot her down? Unknown, but that's the least of her worries.
So we do know this. So what the hell are the aliens?
Throughout your time in Returnal, the biggest head-scratcher that comes early on is the aliens that have seemed to inhabit the planet. Most of these aliens, called sentients, seem to have died before our arrival, with another group of aliens called the Severed being the only ones left. Left behind are numerous archives and xenoglyphs that the player can read, but will require a specific amount of xenoglyph ciphers to fully decipher. Xenoglyphs and archives are going to help piece together what's going on with aliens, while the scout logs in the house will help us understand Celine. These aren't the only piece of info that we can find, though, as all the enemies and equipment in the game have an analysis counter that fills up the more we kill or acquire that specific enemy or item. My only real gripe with the system is how random everything is. It's not really Returnal's fault, more so a flaw of it being a roguelike, but it still doesn't make it any better. Everything but the house has a completely random location, since the levels change every cycle. So there's no way to tell what scout log spawns where. It's also impossible to game the system by noticing patterns. I went through the same door multiple times, and while I got the same environment, the enemies and items that spawned were different. Essentially, the only way to unlock things is to brute force it and hope you get lucky. Using notes and diaries like Returnal does is not something new, especially when it's placed out of order like this, but these storytelling devices only work when they're placed by a real human.
Okay, let's stop the aliens for a sec. I'm more concerned with the ending. Let's figure out what the ending even means. To me, that's the most important part because it kind of is the game. So here's the ending.
But you know, never say never, so we'll try our damnedest anyway. To reach our next objective, we have to make it to the Abyssal Scar, an oceanic abyss. It's a nice thematic twist, as Act 1 has us ascend a tower to find the signal, while Act 2 has us descend an abyss to the center of the world.
Right.
It was this act, though, that made me really appreciate the detail of Atropos. Not only are the levels intuitive enough to understand on subsequent runs, so you aren't confused when you inevitably have to come back, but they also manage to tell a story all on their own. Level 3, for instance, the Derelict Citadel, pretty much spells out the entire plot right there. It's a massive citadel that likely housed thousands of aliens at once. Just outside, though, is Level 1, which, as opposed to Level 2, is the only one that can be walked to. There are numerous statues in all the levels, but them being placed here is rather interesting. The way they're presented almost makes it seem religious. Some of them are even striking specific poses, like these statues which have their hands in their stomachs. There are a few archives in the game that place importance on very specific aliens, which makes me believe they have some kind of hierarchy. This idea of placing some people within the group on a pedestal could explain the entrance to Level 3.
But, what? Okay.
There are quite a few corpses on the roads leading to the giant gate that sealed off the citadel from the rest of the planet. This, to me, either means that some of the aliens were left outside and trying to get back in, or were traveling here on a pilgrimage. I am more inclined to agree with the latter, given that they are a part of a hive mind, and to me would have no reason to cast out their brothers. Well, besides the one time that they actually did do that. Speaking of which, they too also have some interesting history implanted on the planet, as Level 2 has similar architecture to Level 1, but these statues are seen with red wrappings on them, along with ciphers that are plastered all over the walls. A few logs and glyphs talk about the Severed wanting to ascend, and how these wrappings were part of their final ritual. Equally, these large centipede-like fossils that protrude out of the ground are also supposed to be a part of this religion, acting as almost proof of their beliefs. So even though we just barely combed over the landscape, we've already come to many conclusions about the aliens and their way of life, while also opening up more questions for later, such as the entire existence of Level 6. The Abyssal Scar is the oddest area of the bunch. It's down way below the planet's surface and also has no connection to Level 3 unlike the previous groups. Usually, if you don't figure it out by look, you could find the similarities in its design, such as how Level 2 and 5 share similar rooms but look nothing alike. 3 and 6, however, have no connection, as far as I'm aware anyway. There are statues accompanied by large structures that expand far past the render distance, but I just don't see the connection. Since we also have to consider how this place became the Citadel if our discussion about the Axe is correct. Oddly enough, if it was the other way around and that Act 1 and 2 progressed in a normal way, then that would make more narrative sense here, but also end up clogging up the previous levels. It's like an allegory for the whole game, really. There's never going to be a moment where it all comes together and clicks. There's always going to be something missing. But there is still so much story that can be hypothesized by just looking at its grooves and edges. And I think that stands as a testament to the art and level design of this game. It's truly magnificent in so many ways, and is easily the best thing Returnal has to offer. Once you're done admiring that art though, you'll end up stumbling upon the final boss of the game named Ophion. By now though, some of the names I've mentioned throughout this video will have perked your ears a bit, and for good reason. Many of the names used in this game are based on similar names seen in Greek mythology. Selene is based on the Greek goddess of the same name, who is seen as the personification of the moon, which could also explain why the moon is here on Atropos. Selene's parents were the titans Thea and Hyperion. In the old house, we see a photo of Selene's mom with the name Thea, and while we don't hear much about her father, Hyperion is a boss in the game, and there's a scout log referencing her dad playing an organ at one point, which is what Hyperion does. The planet...
Oh, that's a fucking weird touch. So that was supposed to maybe represent her father? I mean, technically the thing had hair.
Itself, Atropos is also named after one of the three fates, who specifically cuts the threads of fate, meaning that Atropos would determine the states of all mortals and would have them cut ties with life by cutting their thread. Atropos the planet hasn't cut Selene's thread just yet, and wants her to experience and understand something, and only then will she be granted the sweet release of death. Defeating Ophion finally grants us access to the center of the planet. Down here is a black sedan, something that, while strange, will be relevant in just a moment. When Selene makes it to the center, she sees Chaos, who grants her a vision of the day she and her son got into a car crash. One late night, the two were driving somewhere before crossing a bridge, but on that bridge was the astronaut. This caused Selene to swerve out of the way and into the water. She sees Chaos down there, which prompts her to escape, but she's unable to save Helios in time and has to abandon him. As I said earlier, Returnal won't be giving us any answers. Fortunately, there is more content to explore, plus this ending does recontextualize a few things seen throughout the game. At the beginning of every run, the game says Helios abandoned, which is a bit of an odd thing to display, but it refers to how Selene abandoned her son during the car crash. Back at the house, all the clocks say 8:36 p.m. Selene also leaves a voicemail for Helios during a visit to the house that talks about heating the food in the fridge for 8 minutes and 36 seconds, and a scout log mentioned that when Selene left and died of old age, she was alive for 63 years and 8 days. 836 refers to the time the crash happened. Also, this one jump scare ends with one of the lights flickering on and off, and it kinda reminds me of the warning lights on a car. Furthermore, the song playing during their drive was Don't Fear the Reaper by the Blue Oyster Cult. In Level 4, which is at the start of Act 2, Selene mentions a song that she can hear, and it gets louder and louder the closer you get to the source. This is supposed to lead you to Hyperion, but the song he's playing is a piano version of Don't Fear the Reaper.
Is that really
on top
what
of
it
this,
is?
this scene is where Helios mentions
Really?
the White
That's
Shadow,
so
the same
strange.
name as the signal, and the black sedan in the ocean is the same car that she was driving the day of the crash. This is what gives credence to the theory that either Atropos isn't real and is simply all in Selene's head, or that Atropos is manifesting creations based on her mind. This is almost bluntly stated in Glyph 16, saying, quote, "This time I act without thought and reach for the lost child. My negligence is why I am here." Selene's hesitation that arose when it came to rescuing Helios cost him his life, and is one of the many reasons she's trapped here on Atropos. What could sway the pendulum towards the planet being real is that Selene is seen with heterochromia, a condition where the eyes are two different colors. Yet in the cutscene, she has the same eye color, showing that this may have happened as a result of the crash, as this condition is known to sometimes manifest during traumatic moments. To me, anyway, it seems like Chaos wants her to remember what happened, as Selene has no recollection of these memories.
So he believes it's a real alien, and this alien is the architect of her suffering. Well, she is, but the alien itself.
In fact, when we first meet with Chaos, Selene even asks if this is something it wants her to see. In the DLC, which we'll talk about shortly, there's a poem called the Lamentations of Sisyphus, but the further down you go, the more it starts to shift the text. The original stanza talks about Zeus punishing Sisyphus for his sin, but eventually morphs into Chaos punishing her, or Selene, for her sins. The second line of She Who Cheated Death could also refer to Selene abandoning Helios and surviving something that should have killed her. It still doesn't exactly help define its goals, but at the very least it does seem to want Selene to remember something, which is what leads us to the secret ending of the base game. Given how replayable Returnal is, and how much content you'll likely have left to complete, there's a good chance you'll still continue to play the game long after the credits roll. If you do, and finish all the house sequences, then you'll start to notice a new item called the Sun Phase Fragments. Selene decides that she wants to set fire to the house here on Atropos, and to do that she's going to need more of these fragments. There are 6 in total with 1 for each level, but just like all the items before, it's completely random. The fragments do seem to have a set room that they spawn in, like here on level 1. I found that many others, including myself, all found the fragment in this specific room with the invisible platforms. But of course that is based on the assumption that you know what room to look for, and even if you do, it still doesn't matter as you have to hope the game spawns the room for you anyway. We've already discussed this earlier, but it's another reason why this randomized RNG system just does not work well when it comes to telling a cohesive story. Having to get lucky takes the fun out of exploration completely. It's no different than opening a loot box for a required story item. Assuming you find all the fragments though, you're given one final house sequence. On the first floor, there was a door that was always locked, but now we can enter it, and at the bottom is a single wheelchair. Celine talks about someone in this wheelchair and how they regret what happened to them, but unfortunately that's all the info we seem to get. That's because this cutscene is just one part of the story, as the reward for finishing this sequence is a set of car keys, and I only know of one car here on Atropos. That means we have to defeat Ophion again, as the car is locked behind the boss room. Having the keys allows you to interact with the car, rewarding you with the second half of the cutscene, which shows a grotesque creature sitting in the wheelchair instead. It seems to briefly attack her before Celine fights back, wounding it in the process. Before it dies, it calls out to her, and the subtitles show the name Thea at the bottom. The final scene is then shown for the perspective of the astronaut, but Returnal takes a quick book out of Metroid Prime, as we briefly see the face of the being inside, only to discover that it's Celine. So she was both in the car and the astronaut during the crash? It's a little bit confusing, but thankfully we have one last piece of content to discuss. I can imagine players being a bit annoyed at the end though, seeing as it answers none of the questions posed by the game, but rather adds more complications. Still, like the last ending, there are a few more pieces that we can add to our puzzle. This creature is without question Celine's mom, but her design is rather peculiar. If we go with the theory that Atropos is manifesting creations based on the mind of the visitor, then this to me is how Celine views her mom, this disgusting.
So he believes that she's actually on the planet, and Atropos is a hell world that she's basically on. At least with what he's saying. The theory that Atropos is manifesting creations based on the mind of the visitor.
Is manifesting creations based on the mind of the visitor, then this to me is how Celine views her mom, this disgusting looking creature. It's not the only time the game will do this, which is why I believe in the theory, but even the in-game items paint a pretty convincing picture. When visiting the house again, Celine might see a news report of a crash. This crash is not referring to hers, but rather the one with her mom. Celine and Thea got into a crash on the same bridge as the one Celine and Helios went on, but in this case, Celine came out unharmed and Thea was injured, forcing her to use a wheelchair for life. This tracks with the creature using the wheelchair, but her stomach is noticeably large, implying that Thea was pregnant. In the myth, Helios and Celine were siblings, with Thea being their mother, so it's safe to assume that the child would have been Helios. Celine's child, Helios, is different. There's another audio log that has Celine talking with her doctor. The two eventually got on the topic of names, but Celine claimed that she already had one picked out, saying that it was from her family, implying that she named her son Helios after her late brother that never made it. This hostility we see from the creature is also representative of Celine's relationship with her mom. Thea had the dream of becoming an astronaut, but thanks to the crash she was unable to live out that dream as her spine and legs were severely broken. She grew rather angry over this and wouldn't have a chance to let this boil over since Celine got her passion for astronomy and space from her mom. Plus, according to the police report, the injuries Thea received were exacerbated due to her trying to save her passengers, so had she not saved Celine, she would have been fine. So now Thea has to watch her dreams slip away from her, all while her daughter gets to live the life that she wanted. That is why she hated her. Celine was abused as a child verbally and possibly physically due to this. It was always a bad day when Thea was around, and she was definitely going to—
You know, I did say that initially. I'm like, did the mom actually abuse her? I initially said that. I don't think I made too much of it, but okay.
make sure Celine got an earful of it, always reminding her that she was the cause of her mother's pain. Whenever her mother would call her, it was never to ask about her or how she's doing, it was always to complain. But this event caused a massive rift between the two, one that would get worse as we continue to discover more about her. The only part about this that isn't exactly clear is Helios, Celine's brother, not her kid. Going back to the police report, the text specifically uses the words passengers and them, implying that Thea was rescuing multiple people and not just Celine. Within the DLC again is also a newspaper, with the crash being the headline. However, there's a paragraph at the bottom that says that the police have not found a trace of her missing child in either the lake or the surrounding forest, but that a second child was recovered and unharmed from the water. Weirdly, that last line is cut off in the in-game reader, which to my knowledge is the only document that does this. It's almost as if the devs had intentionally hid this detail here on purpose. The mention of a forest, though, got me thinking about something else here in the hospital, and that's these childlike drawings of the reception desk. Each photo tells a tale about a girl and her family, her mom and someone who goes unnamed. One day they seem to have gotten split up and the girl was left wandering the forest. While walking around, she heard a voice call out to her but couldn't find the source. Eventually she did make it home, but by the time she did, she ended up becoming a full-grown woman. The final line says, "It's time to take flight to where the sun shines bright." My initial reaction was that the sun was a metaphor for heaven, and that this was Helios, whose soul was trying to find Celine and Thea. But the picture seemed very adamant that this character is a girl, which adds to the confusion. Plus there's also the question of who the blurred out name is. I'm not entirely sure what to make of this myself, but at the very least the newspaper does at least confirm that two kids were in the car at the time of the crash. Celine, and who I assume was her brother Helios. Everything regarding Thea's pregnancy is completely up in the air. Thankfully, we do have a few more pieces of info to find, but before we move on to that, I know this video has been rather disjointed, almost mimicking the chaotic nature of the game's own story. But I do hope that through all this you can see how wonderful the story of Returnal has started to become. You will feel extremely confused by the end, but the game does make sure things are at least semi-cohesive when it comes to the important stuff. Mystery is an easy way for me to get interested in the story. I wanted to know what happened to Celine and why she was being subjected to this. The game continuously strung me along with this pitch, and the longer I held on, the more enveloped I became. Like I said before, from very early on, I knew I wanted to see this through to the end because something about this was truly special. It was like something I hadn't experienced before, so like Celine, I wanted to get the answers to the questions I had. But just as the loop continues, so too does the story. A year after release, Returnal would get a free post-launch update called Ascension, which not only added a co-op mode, letting you brave through the dangers of Atropos with a friend, but also added a new endless game mode called the Tower of Sisyphus. In the myth, Sisyphus refers to the man of the same name, who is most well known for being the guy who rolls the boulder up a mountain. That's because he was a prominent trickster and cheated death quite a few times, so the gods cursed him to roll the boulder up, only to let it go back down once he reached the top. Instead of rolling a boulder up a hill though, we're going to be rolling Celine up a tower. As the name implies, this is a gauntlet of death that can't be finished. The whole point is to go through as many floors as possible until you die, and then do it again to get a better score. It is without question a perfect DLC for a game like this. Outside of the occasional cipher and scout log, the tower is a strictly gameplay-focused experience, so for those that want the gameplay, then you can kill to your heart's content. Plus, you no longer need to reset once the final boss of the act is complete, as there is no ending. You can go as long as you want. It's genuinely an amazing piece of content, and the only thing this game really needed, honestly. But the tower is not without its own story. The DLC adds more scout logs, glyphs, and archives, some of which are related to the tower, while others help add more context to the previous conversations we've had throughout the video. It also acts as a continuation of Celine's story, as while reveling in the death and carnage, you will, once again, eventually slip up and die. This causes a hospital bed to spawn in the main room. These hospital visits replace our house sequences from earlier, and are to me, the most important piece of content in the game. Seeing the hospital reminds Celine of her mother and decides to get her a bouquet of white poppies. Celine likely did this before in real life after the crash had happened, so she's trying to do it again in hopes of getting an answer. This requires us to get 6 poppies, just like the 6 sun fragments, and they are acquired the exact same way, yet it's somehow—
Oh my god, I don't like that that's in this game. To unlock story-driven content, you have to grind the game. Like, in a very, very, we have to do this again, really, type of way. I'm not really a fan of that. I'm not really a fan of that at all. I like the story beats, I like the game, but I don't want to keep playing it like it's Vermintide or like Left 4 Dead. Or like something that I have to go back and like do the same thing again and again and again and again to get like very few things. This
more
game,
annoying
it was
than
a little
before.
bit tough.
The 6 fragments were random, whereas the 6 poppies are guaranteed to always show up on the same floor. Except you can only carry one at a time, as each one comes with its own hospital visit. So continuing on to the next floor after finding one is pointless. Each time you acquire these, you have to get the flower, die or reset, do the hospital visit, go back to the tower, then go a little bit further than last time, only to repeat that 5 more times. It is
Exactly, yeah.
agonizingly slow, and maybe one of the most tedious things I've ever done. I have no
Exactly that. It's literally that. What? No. That's how they get you to play the game, but at the same time, it's like, the 20 chalice dungeons for the true ending. Yeah, that's a bit of a grind.
idea how they managed to make the gathering process worse than the sun fragments, but they did. What broke up a lot of the tedium, though, was the scout logs that appeared here, and while all of them were informative, some of which I want to highlight were about Celine's mental state. Going off what's heard, it's almost as if the tower has broken her in some way, or at least another version of her, since of course our Celine is not the one making these logs. She's left feeling helpless after every failure, since she has to go all the way back down just to climb up again. One of the scout logs mentions how she's doing this to give herself meaning and purpose. She's exhausted all the options but the tower, so if this fails, that's it. She needs to believe that there is something at the top, so she has to convince herself to not give up, as if this fails and there truly is no way out, then what's the point? A bit unrelated to this, but there are a few more logs that present her as almost manic, mentioning how her suit claims that she's contaminated by all the blood and parasites attached to her, but she doesn't seem to mind, as she actually feels beautiful in her new skin. It's almost meta in that sense, as while our Celine didn't say these words, the player could be feeling this emotion. All of the Celines in-game are really just all our different versions playing at once. Your Celine and mine are out there doing their own things separately, so naturally each one will reflect the mind of the player wielding her. Are you confident enough that you can make it to the top, or have you given up, wallowing in the blood of your enemies as you try to make sense of what's going on, questioning whether this is even worth your time? Similarly, those that have succumbed to the cycle and uninstalled the game is another way of saying that Celine gave up. It's a rather fascinating way to portray a character,
That is
especially
cool.
if you look at this from
Sure,
Celine's perspective.
that's interesting, yeah.
All of these Celines may be different, but they are her, so if the tower broke them, who's to say it won't break her too? It becomes even more concerning once you start to familiarize yourself with Celine. Being part researcher and part explorer, much of her dialogue is analytical, explaining things based on how they are, rather than delving into nonsensical, opinionated talks. When Celine first grabs the assault rifle, she doesn't cheer in joy over finding a better weapon. She rather notes how the weapon is similar to the carbine technology that they have back on Earth. Or instead of freaking out over the parasite grabbing her arm, she studies it, lets it attach to her, and then reports how she feels. To use a weird analogy, it's like hearing your quiet friend get angry for the first time. You're almost taken aback by it. Equally, whenever Celine talks about herself and has an actual opinion, it's time to shut up and listen, as who knows how long it's going to be before she says something else again. Which is made all the worse when the opinions you do hear of her are about her abusive mother or how she went off the deep end thanks to the dangers of Atropos. Assuming you do push past the rooms and gather a poppy or two, you'll gain access to the hospital. The hospital visits are largely the same, with small parts of the area being changed each visit. Sometimes a new note will appear or another iteration.
I really wish, I know thematically it would make more sense to kind of like relive the lives over and over and over again to kind of find these story blips, and that's what they did. But I wish the game was just straight up longer. And instead, they basically took these cycles and gave you chapters to find. Like this whole supposed hospital scene that we haven't seen because we had to go grind the Tower of Sisyphus for like, I don't know, 10 hours to basically get all these scenes. I wish it was kind of bundled into another life. First playthrough, you're dead. You're like, oh my god, what's going on? Second playthrough, same thing. Third playthrough, but it's all locked in one story. It's not like you have to just kind of roll with the game and kill the same bosses repeatedly. In a way, again, purgatory, the looping, blah, 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 makes sense. But I do wish it was a little bit more tight-knit in how it presented all of these, like... Wait, was this in the tower? What were the hospital scenes from? Because he said you had to go through the tower and get poppies to then unlock all this other shit. Did you see the hospital scene? Exactly, a guaranteed story beat. Oh, did you die in the tower to see them? Oh, they spawn after you die. Okay, so technically you don't have to... What were the poppies for? He said it was tedium to go through the tower to collect the poppies. I figured the poppies would be the story beat, as were the masks for the base campaign. That's so weird, man. Yeah, anyways, what I was going to say is like a guaranteed story beat for each cycle of death. You know when you beat the final boss of the first cycle, it's the giant alien that's floating with the heart? You kill him, white shadow shows up, you escape, and then you live your life, you die, and then you're back on the planet. To me, that would be basically massive story beat, and then beat that segment, get another massive story beat, and then beat the next segment and get another massive story beat. That's kind of how I would view it.
Of something will develop. After enough flowers have been found, Celine can then open the door. Inside is her mother, Thea.
Okay, well, there you go. After you find enough flowers, you can open a room where you find your very beautiful mother.
But instead of berating her like before, the two hug for probably the first time since the crash. It's all a ruse, though, as the body will disappear with chaos taking her place. When she wakes up, she recalls that this is how things actually were. No atonement or embrace, just guilt and anger. Like the base game, there is one last ending to acquire, but the hospital and tower give us a ton of new information that either adds or recontextualizes most of what we know already. So now that everything has been given to us, we can finally talk about what's really going on here. As mentioned before, Celine and Thea got into an accident one day, which permanently left Thea bound to a wheelchair. As we know though, Celine would also get into a car accident on the same bridge, except she managed to survive, with Helios taking the fall. Returnal is quite a weird story with many coincidences, but it becomes a lot easier to understand when you look at it metaphorically. Both women, Celine and Thea, were mothers, who had dreams of being astronauts and crashed on the same bridge. It's meant to show how similar the two are, and how Celine has become like her mother. It's also meant to show the effects of generational trauma. Thea's disappointment in Celine affected her mentally, which in turn was passed down to Helios through her, because the other connection they share is that they both detest their children. Thea didn't like Celine, that much is clear, but quite a bit of evidence seems to imply the same between Celine and Helios. One of the house sequences actually has us playing as Helios. This is confirmed as much when you read the name on the door. In that same level, there's a voicemail on the answering machine from Celine where she tells him that she's going to be home late. Celine worked long nights to pursue her dream, but ended up neglecting Helios because of this. There was also possible evidence that she physically abused him. At one point, his favorite plushie Octo goes missing, only for it to be found underneath the kitchen table. When he goes downstairs, he says that Octo knows not to go down here, referring to the fact that Celine might get angry at him, so he tries to stay upstairs in his room. It's very common for kids of abused parents to see places in their homes as off-limits. Rooms you don't want to enter unless you want to piss off mom and dad. That's what this feels like to me. Similarly, Helios ends up running into the living room at one point as he's trying to hide from what he calls the monster, which eventually reveals to be the astronaut. He is specifically hiding inside the TV until the astronaut reaches in and grabs him. But this same scene happens earlier, but from another perspective.
And
at one point, Celine goes up to the TV and reaches her hands in as well. She also has a dialogue line that says, "What are you doing? Wake up." These two scenes are likely the same thing from different points of view. Analyzing
What the fuck? I remember that.
the dialogue likely means that this is how Celine woke Helios up one day, possibly because he wouldn't get out of bed, or simply because she was already angry and decided to take it out on him. Celine doing the same actions as the astronaut lines up with the other ending where Celine is seen inside the suit of the astronaut. But I wouldn't take this literally. Just as this creature might be how Celine sees Thea, the astronaut is how Helios might see Celine. I see it as a representation of Celine's drive to become an astronaut.
Yeah.
Back to that other house sequence,
Okay.
alongside news of the crash is another report about the lunar landing. This shows the two most significant parts of Celine's life, her relationship with her mother and her dream of becoming an astronaut. Relating this back to the prior scene, her dream of exploring the world is overtaking her responsibilities as a mother, correlating with the voicemail of her coming home late. Celine wanted to pursue her dreams, but like Thea, their child forced them to stay grounded on Earth. As much as she hates her though, there is also a log of Celine's that mentions how Thea was right when it came to raising a child. Celine figured that she could be a better mother and possibly stop the trauma that Thea imposed on her, but she ended up becoming just like her mother, doing the same things as she does and reacting the same to similar situations. Like the Abyss though, we've only just breached the surface, as I think we can go even deeper with this. This next bit isn't confirmed, but does at least warrant some discussion. Crazy theory, but I believe that Celine may have killed Thea and Helio so that she could become an astronaut. At the hospital is a police report that shows that a police officer got a call about a disturbance at the Vassos residence, which is Celine's last name. When he arrived, she was too distraught to talk, but the officer noticed that the house was on fire. When you put down the report though, Celine says the line, "The price of freedom." This is one of those wide-eyed...
That doesn't seem so bullshit. That's kind of a crazy twist. That's kind of a crazy twist. And you'd never get that from beating the game. You have to beat the game 10 times. Okay. Interesting. That's weird, eh? What the fuck?
that a police officer got a call about a disturbance at the Vassos residence, which is Celine's last name. When he arrived, she was too distraught to talk, but the officer noticed that the house was on fire. When you put down the report, though, Celine says the line, "The price of freedom."
She fucking burned the house down, and you can't tell me otherwise. She literally burned the house down. She's reading the police report about her house being burned, and she says the price of freedom. So, we talked about her trying to kill herself and the kid. Maybe she literally tried to kill her kid and regretted it. Anyways. Well, obviously. To be rid of her mother, it only cost her a home. Do you think she burned her mother in the house? Did the mother die in a house fire?
This was one of those wide-eyed, jaw-dropping moments to me, as this was one of the most obvious confessions I've ever heard. We know that Atropos has parallels to things from Celine's past, so it's to my understanding that Celine burning the house on Atropos was connected to Celine burning her own house with Thea inside. This could also explain why we have to go to the basement to find the wheelchair.
With Thea inside? Wait, she did? Sorry.
Burning the house on Atropos was connected to Celine burning her own house with Thea inside. This could also explain why we have to go to the basement to find the wheelchair, as it could be showing us where she was in her last moments. As for Helios, well, we already know about the crash.
What does the report say? Yeah, good question. Let me read this. On blank, 36 hours, I was called to following reports of an unspecified disturbance at the property. I was met at the scene by, probably Celine, Vassos, waiting outside and smoking. In a state of apparent distress. Blank was too distraught to tell me what had occurred. Upon attempting to gain access to the premise, I observed a blaze from within, determining that it would be unsafe to enter without proper equipment and training. I immediately contacted local fire authorities. Celine remained in a state of shock, unresponsive and questioning as to whether they have been alone.
At the Vassos
whether they had been alone in the premises, and so was taken to the county memorial hospital for observation and possible treatment. Whether they had been alone in the premises. Okay, so the mother was possibly killed in the house?
Residence, which is Celine's last moments. As for Helios, well, we already know about the crash, but I also believe this to be intentional. I think it's fair to say that the astronaut is not real, at least on Earth. We know it's a real entity on Atropos since the glyphs mention it by name, but it's also Atropos. A lot of weird shit goes on here. To me, I see the astronaut in this moment as Celine refusing to acknowledge her decision, by instead blaming it on something else, while also reinforcing that her ambition.
To me, you know what this scene looks like? See how she's showing her kid? And at one point it's like, oh, it's about us. And then she's like, no, it's about me. You know what I mean? Weird.
As an astronaut, far outweighed everything else in her life, as it's the astronaut that caused the crash. Or more specifically, it's her dreams of becoming an astronaut that caused the crash.
Yeah.
Still, this doesn't explain why she threw the car off the bridge, and I admit, it's a pretty big hole in my theory. It's also quite difficult to get a timeline of these events too. What convinces me that most, if not all of this was intentional are two scout logs. One where she says, "That's why I signed up, there are no attachments pulling me back."
This bitch is crazy. Wait, she's evil. That's why I signed up, there's no attachments pulling me back. So she killed her mother and drowned her child, only to then have regrets. Well, no fucking shit, Sherlock. What the fuck?
And another where she mentions how she has given up everything for this role.
I will continue to do so. I have given up everything. So she really wanted to become an astronaut so badly. Holding her back in what she wants? Yeah, I agree. And she feigned this accident.
The wording here is quite interesting, as it's almost like she sees her family as a burden to her. People are stopping her from achieving her dreams, which is why she had to get rid of them. Another log also laments how Thea was never happy, but that she always saved her smiles for Helios. Once again though, after it's found, Celine will then say that now they can be together again. Further confirming that yes, both are dead, but her tone here is bizarre. There is no guilt.
Huh? Well, hang on.
Celine will then say that now they can be together again. Further confirming that her family is a burden to her. People are stopping her from achieving her dreams, which is why she had to get rid of them. Another log also laments how Thea was never happy, but that she always saved her smiles for Helios. Once again though, after it's found, Celine will then say that now they can be together again.
That's crazy.
Further confirming that yes, both are dead, but her tone here is bizarre. There is no guilt or sadness or anything, just once again stating the facts as she always does. And it's a pretty cold thing to say for someone who just lost her mom and son. Everything about Celine being a murderer though is just my interpretation, and I don't want it to—
That's his interpretation. Press 1 if you think she killed both of them and feels no remorse. Well, she probably did feel remorse. I think she literally killed both of them. I don't know. If that's his theory, everything kind of lines up. It sounds like it makes sense. Completely. And then she's sent to her own personal hell because she ends up dying, and in her last moments regrets it, too. You don't think so? I believe that completely. That completely makes sense to me. I don't know. I mean, even this is such a tell right here. Look how evil this bitch looks. Look at this.
Crazy theory, but I believe that Celine may have—
Look at this. This alone, I didn't realize this until seeing it again.
killed Thea and Helios so that she could become an astronaut.
It's no longer about the family. Fuck off, kid. It's all about me.
At the hospital is a police report. It
And
shows
then
that a police—
this is crazy, too. This is crazy. I think one of them died, and she felt relief, so she killed the other. Well, she might have burned the house down. For whatever reason.
police officer got a call about a disturbance coming in, as there is still the biggest question that lies are. There is no guilt or sadness or anything, just once again stating the facts as she always does. And it's a pretty cold thing to say for someone who just lost her mom and son. Everything about Celine being a murderer, though, is just my interpretation, and I don't want it to come off as canon, just a tinfoil hat theory.
Yeah. The astronaut on the road forcing her to swerve off the bridge represents her astronaut. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. That is her interpretation of where she could be in life if she swerves off that bridge and kills her son. That's her dream, and that's why it shows her in that position. Right? It shows her in that suit as well as in the car. Yeah, I believe that. Sure.
The tinfoil is starting to meld into my skull, though, as there is still the biggest question that lies at the heart of all this. Is Atropos real or not? Celine acknowledges that Atropos and the astronaut are real, but in the same breath says that she can't trust her own mind. There are also numerous references to Celine not being fit for the job. At her house is a rejection letter from Astra that is next to her computer.
Yeah, this too. Maybe she just went insane.
And numerous scout logs—
This was basically saying she wasn't in the right condition and that they're going to get somebody else. This is in her bedroom. We apologize for the regrettable delay in our response with a truly humbling amount of applicants to choose from. Our unexpected predicament is both extraordinary and unprecedented. So imagine if she killed her mother and son only to find out that she's not even fit for the fucking job.
At her house is a rejection letter from Astra.
But she didn't say I regret what I did, but you deserve it, Mom. Something along those lines.
That is next to her computer. And numerous scout logs talk about her mental state, one of which is about her delusions. It seems like Celine never became an Astro Scout, which leads some to believe that this is all in her head and that exploring space was something she wanted to do but never could. It also might explain the car crash, as she was possibly lost in thought or angry over the rejection, causing her to take her own life. However, Scout Log 62 shows that after Celine gets out of the car, she makes it home and greets her mom, so it wouldn't connect to the theory that she died along with Helios and is living out her life in her head. Assuming that this is true though, that would then make Returnal a proprietor of the "it was all a dream" trope. While I don't personally subscribe to the theory myself, even if it is canon, it's not as simplistic as boring as the trope often is. Usually this ends up giving the scene no meaning, but I found it to be the opposite. Celine and the parallels to her mom are integral to the story, and the game has a clear inspiration from Greek mythology by using its characters and events to create another parallel to the story.
That is true. So, her mother hated her because she took away from her mother's dream, and she now hates her own son for doing the same thing that she did to her mother. I firmly believe she tried to kill her kid. Again, it's the idea that the mirror itself is everything. That's the tell outside of all the other shit we've heard. So strange. What a weird game.
Celine isn't a manifestation of her own hell, either because the planet is manipulating her or because she's guilty of multiple heinous acts and is now being tortured for them in her metaphorical purgatory. Even if the main plot of Atropos didn't happen, the relationship with her mom and son did happen, and were at the very least the cause of these possible delusions. Like I said though, I don't personally believe in the theory myself, as I find the story much more entertaining and rewarding if Celine had actually landed on a planet that is forcing her to question herself and come to terms with what she did.
True.
Regardless, Celine is still not done yet. Talking with her mom didn't reward her with anything, so now she must seek the answers once more. Her only lead though is the tower, this never-ending spiral that continues to push her further and further into madness. She believes that if she climbs high enough, she'll be worthy in the eyes of Algos. Algos is the boss that you fight at the end of every phase, who is unique in the fact that he only starts with one phase of health. The trade-off is that he grows in power upon each visit, having up to a maximum of 3 phases by your third fight. 3 is the magic number after all. 3 levels in Act 1, another 3 in Act 2, and 3 more to cap off the third act. This means that Celine has gone through a total of 9 different levels across the game, almost as if she's going through the 9 circles of her own hell. As you can tell, he's a specific boss to the tower, and the only one you'll fight in said tower. Well, at least as far as Phase 3. I didn't make it very far into Phase 4. Like the rest of the cast, the name is based on a Greek deity, who is seen as the personification of pain. Fitting, given how painful this thing is to climb. This could also be a happy accident, but Algos is often a shortened version of the word algorithm, and Algo is also the name of a programming language, which could link how the tower in the previous acts can be seen as an algorithmic sequence of different levels and maps. All that's required of the player is for them to reach Phase 4, Room 1, as doing so will mean you have completed the first 3 phases and fought Algos 3 separate times. Once defeated, Celine will question if she is finally worthy and thinks that she should visit the hospital again.
Show me then. What do you want me to see? Is this all I get? Just an empty space where she should be. A moment of respite, at least. A break in the cycle. No pain here. This was earned.
Chaos has taken her to a pocket dimension of sorts filled with nothing but emptiness. Inside are numerous other Celines who all made it to where she is now. Despite feeling displeased about not being shown anything as her reward, she notices that it's rather calm and is like the first time she's given herself a break since landing on Atropos. So like the Celines around her, she kneels down and rests, and judging by the others, she likely stayed here until her time was up. Even though the player can continue playing after viewing the cutscene, Celine doesn't comment on the vision, so this cutscene seems to be the final moment of the story. She doesn't go back to Atropos, her journey is complete, and the cycle is broken. It's not exactly a happy ending, but it's something. Celine finally understands what she did and came to terms with her own life. Her actions, decisions, thoughts, and excuses all came back. She finally understands and accepts who she is. While being able to go home and live her life would be great, this is as good of an ending as you could ask for. Plus, assuming that Celine is actually guilty of murder, this is ultimately a fate she imposed upon herself, so it's fitting that she doesn't get everything she wants after taking it away from those that she knew. But this finally leads us to the actual ending of Returnal. If the commentary throughout this video didn't give it away, I love this game. The gameplay is utterly addicting, and I cannot wait to hop in and grind the tower again. The amount of items, weapons, and buffs you can find add to the diversity of each run, forcing you to not just go back to the old reliable. Sometimes the cards aren't in your favor, and you have to roll with the punches, whether it means being permanently debuffed or having to kill the final boss with a starter pistol. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow. It's a perfectly concise gameplay loop that I never got tired of. The story, on the other hand, is anything but concise, but there is beauty within all that chaos. Piecing together lore from all kinds of different sources is exhausting but very rewarding, as I feel like I'm uncovering my own secrets, just as Celine was uncovering the story of Atropos. This video is my attempt at making sense of this chaotic amalgamation so that I could share it with those who may be confused. But as you can see, Returnal is a community-driven game, and only by interacting and sharing can we truly uncover its narrative. So if you played the game yourself or came to some conclusions while watching the video, feel free to leave them down in the comments progress and making you start from the beginning was likely enough to defeats Nemesis, though. She wakes up from the dream realm that Nemesis put her in, only to come across the large device at the end of the hall. This is the white shadow that she was meant to find. This also means Astra can pick her up and take her home. Following this is an extremely fast look at the rest of Celine's life. She goes home and gets interviewed about her findings, relaxes, has kids, grows old, and eventually passes on. I know that seemed rather quick, but I pretty much condensed an entire 12 hours into one neat timeline. Returnal can be hard and unforgiving at times. Sometimes it's skill, sometimes it's bad luck, mostly it's both. It's a stressful journey having to reset back at the beginning because of one mistake, but that's what makes the ending worth it. You and Celine managed to stick it out against a planet that wanted to break you. You survived the impossible, so it's only natural that you get a satisfying ending to cap off your journey. Celine escaped, survived, and had a happy ending. Congratulations.
Interesting. Sarah's story will hopefully be a bit understandable, but with some secrets to unravel. Oh, yeah. This is such an interesting game in the sense that I still don't really get the alien planet. Has anyone figured that out? I mean, there's a segment here that we did kind of skip over, the alien segment. Let's watch this a little bit.
Levels to traverse. Now, don't worry, that doesn't mean we have to complete 6 levels back to back, as Acts 1 and 2 are separate from each other, so it's just another gauntlet of 3 levels. But seeing as we're going to be staying here a bit longer than we'd hoped, it's probably a good idea to learn about the planet and introduce ourselves to the locals. Throughout your time in Returnal, the biggest head-scratcher that comes early on is the aliens that have seemed to inhabit the planet. Most of these aliens, called sentients, seem to have died before our arrival, with another group of aliens called the Severed being the only ones left. Left behind are numerous archives and xenoglyphs that the player can read, but will require a specific amount of xenoglyph ciphers to fully decipher. Xenoglyphs and archives are going to help piece together what's going on with the aliens, while the scout logs in the house will help us understand Celine. These aren't the only piece of info that we can find though, as all the enemies and equipment in the game have an analysis counter that fills up the more we kill or acquire that specific enemy or item. My only real gripe with the system is how random everything is. It's not really Returnal's fault, more so a flaw of it being a roguelike, but it still doesn't make it any better. Everything but the house has a completely random location, since the levels change every cycle. So
but why would all of these aliens exist in some sort of hell? How does that have any relation to her life? She wanted to be an astronaut, and so aliens are astronauts?
Would it tell what scout logs
you know what I mean?
where?
Like, what?
It's also impossible to game the system by noticing patterns. I went through the same door multiple times, and while I got the same environment, the enemies and items that spawned were different.
I guess that could be
Essentially,
something.
The only way
sure.
to unlock things is to brute force it and hope you get lucky. Using
The
notes and
aspirations
diaries
for
like Returnal
discovery.
does is not something new, especially when it's placed out of order like this, but these storytelling devices only work when they're placed by a real human. Those games reward those who explore by giving them extra gear or notes that further
Let's
develop
just
the
watch
story.
this real quick.
And while I'm sure these logs were placed here on purpose, it's completely up to chance when they spawn or even if you get the room to begin with. I feel like that takes away a lot of the emotion that can be derived from this. I wasn't happy or sad when I received these, I just was. That's the major fault of doing things this way, as less about being rewarded for taking the time to explore, and rather hoping and praying that the gods of Atropos will deem you worthy enough to give you one of the many items you've been searching for. The major benefit this system has, though, is that it gives the player the chance to experience the game their own way and at their own pace. All of these items may be random, yes, but that also means that they're optional. All the player needs to do is beat Nemesis to get Act 2, and then defeat the final boss Ophion to get the game's real ending. That's it. All the ciphers, logs, and xenoglyphs are optional. Hell, I don't even think the house sequences are required either. That means that it completely separates those who want to play the game for the story and those who want to play the game itself. For those that only enjoy its gameplay loop, you can skip all the pointless story beats, get right into the action. But for those like myself who want to know more about the game and its world, then you get out what you put in. If you want to learn about Celine, then you could focus on reading the scout logs, but if the aliens pique your interest, then you might start looking out for more ciphers. Essentially, the more you use it, the more you learn. It creates another perfect, seamless link between its story and gameplay, while also letting the player dictate their own pace. Speeding through the game at Mach 10 or spending 10 hours searching all the locations you can find are both viable thanks to the game's design, ultimately satisfying every player. As for the lore itself, well, it's actually kind of a mess. See, all the glyphs are written from the perspective of the one writing it, yet once again, one of these writers seems to be Celine. For example, Glyph 14 says, "I was rejected from Olympus. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters of the Okinawan Wenatchee Styx." This refers to a moment earlier in her life when Celine got into a car crash.
Everything makes a little bit more sense now. Look at this. Everything makes more sense. Like, now that we know she's a freak, let's read this again. I was rejected from Olympus. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters of the Okinawan Wenatchee Styx, but there was no room for blood up in the stars. I buried and left them behind, but the astronaut was always following me. So she was rejected by the family, her mother. She then tried to drown her son, which she did. And then she was rejected by, let's just say, NASA, or rejected by, the company to be an astronaut. And I buried and left them behind, but the astronaut was always following me. So she put all of that behind her, but she was never able to accept it, and she still always wanted to be an astronaut. So she never made it. What a fucking weird-ass game.
Well, Glyph 14 says, I was rejected from Olympus. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters of the Okinawan Wenatchee Styx. This refers to a moment earlier in her life when Celine got into a car crash, something we'll see later. So not only was Celine alive during the time of these glyphs, but she even managed to write some of her own, meaning she at the very least knew the alien language. This also ties into something mentioned earlier, as the White Shadow is not just any old name, as it was something her son said to her before the crash. It's almost as if Atropos is altering the world to reflect the mind of the visitor. Thankfully, Celine doesn't take up too much screen time, as most of these glyphs are written by the aliens. According to what was written, they were all under one rule. They also seem to be a part of a hive mind, as that word is mentioned quite a bit throughout the glyphs. For the most part, the aliens seem pretty normal. They had a large society of aliens and created large buildings for them to live in. Something you'll notice, though, is that some of the levels take place in the same location. Level 1 is called the Overgrown Ruins, and Level 4 is the Echoing Ruins. Traversing each biome also sees you coming across the same type of rooms as before. Celine also mentions how the coordinates of levels 2 and 5 are the exact same. That begs the question, though, which one came first? Well, I believe Act 2 to be set in the past. The Overgrown Ruins implies that something was left to grow and that nature has come to reclaim it. Act 2 also introduces similar enemies to the previous act, except they're called protos, like Proto-Titanops, which specifically says that it's an ancestor of the Titanops, one of the enemies of Act 1. Furthermore, if you look up at the sky, you'll notice that the moon is present in Act 2, but shattered in Act 1. In this clip, I'm also using the photo mode slider to move the moon, so you can see that the shatter pieces move with the moon. Ignoring the fact that our solar system's moon is here illuminating the planet, which should not be possible, it shows that Act 2's levels were a previous era of the planet. The only counter-argument to this, though, is the fact that Helios, her ship, is noticeably more rusted in Act 2. Helios is a bit of an oddball in terms of everything, though, since it's the only thing besides Celine that remembers the past cycles as it keeps track of her data across the runs. Either way, what seemed to be the start of their downfall was when they met with Chaos. A recurring character alongside Celine is this large tentacle creature with 4 eyes called Chaos. One day, it seems like the aliens either stumbled upon this creature or were more likely summoned to meet Chaos, but in return, they came out severed. So we have the Sentients, the aliens who were a part of the hive mind, and the Severed, ones who are not a part of the hive mind. This separation seems to be one of the many catalysts to kick off the war between the two groups, as even though they were their brothers, the Sentients saw them as anything but. As said in Glyph 5, our connection to our brethren was destroyed when we descended into the abyss, and although we felt whole upon our return, our brethren feared us. This then started an...
This whole alien plot is just so weird. I don't understand it. What if the devs just made some random stuff and not connected? And just nerds try to force to make any sense of it? I mean, I believe everything we've learned about Celine, her mother, her son. She became severed, broken from reality. What? I don't... There's so much lore about an alien race, 2 different beings. It's just weird. I don't know, man. That I don't know.
Between the two, but one of the glyphs mentions how the bloodshed was unnecessary, further saying that they only wanted to communicate with their brothers again. Glyph 1 says, our connection to our brethren is severed. Our agony is maddening. We cannot stop the endless cycle of violence to come. So not only did they not want to fight, it seemed like they didn't have a choice in the matter. This fits quite neatly within the game, as the two groups are the personification of order and chaos. The hive mind is one homogeneous group, all united under one goal, while the severed are individualistic, and individualism often creates chaos, as there is no central thesis holding it together. Chaos basically created chaos itself. But that was essentially the kickoff to this whole charade, as the real finale might have been the White Shadow. Celine mentions how, assuming she understands these archives correctly, the alien civilization that died here wasn't due to genocide or suicide, but rather some signal. One of the archives even displays an alien peering into the device that we touch at the end of the Nemesis fight. So there seems to be a connection between this device and the downfall of the civilization. Also, while not largely important, this war also ended up affecting our bosses. Freak and Ixion were aliens that became severed, and Nemesis was a sentient alien, one that was a part of the hive mind, but all that was left of them seems to be their burning blue face. While this is all fairly concrete, where things start to get a bit confusing is the introduction of the Creator-Destroyer. The glyphs specifically refer to these beings as the same person, never using the words Creator or Destroyer independently. It's pretty easy to surmise from the data that this Creator-Destroyer is Chaos. But Glyph 9, which talks about Nemesis, says, we recognize that we had a role in this unsought genocide. The one with the burning face is all that is left of our brother's mind. Only the Creator-Destroyer can now reach them if it's able to overcome the judgment that keeps it.
We recognize that we read this one, but we recognized that we played a role in this unsought genocide. The one with the burning face is all that is left of our final brother's mind. Only the Creator and Destroyer can now reach them if it is able to overcome the judgment that keeps it trapped in the cycle. The two groups make up her self and her ambition.
Trapped in the cycle. The mention of a cycle is clearly referring to Celine, but that wouldn't make too much sense since all this happened before we got here. Well, not quite. See, Atropos is a weird planet when it comes to time. When we first arrived, we already saw 2 dead Selines even though we just got here, so it's clear that Celine has been here before, just not our Celine, if that makes sense. Furthermore, one of the last house visits sees Celine firing a cannon which shoots down Helios.
Yeah.
But that can't be possible since Helios was destroyed when we entered the planet. Celine is basically in some kind of time loop paradox, where she crash lands on Atropos, scours the planet only to find the house, goes through the sequences, and shoots the cannon that destroys the other Celine ship, only for that Celine to do the same thing, repeating the cycle. We're just one of the many Celines in the loop, so it's unclear when this officially started. This might also explain how Celine can use the glyphs, as she's been here long enough to meet the sentients and possibly enter the hive mind. Our Celine did not do that though, she arrived very late to the party. What's strange about this is that Celine also references this Creator-Destroyer too. Most of the glyphs that Celine writes seems to be written with I's and me's in them, as the sentients usually use words like brothers or brethren. So it's likely that this Celine, the one making the glyph, is not the Creator-Destroyer, but the first Celine might have been. On top of this, one of the archives has a picture of a headless Astra Scout with the caption, "The source of destruction and the end of all things," referring to her role as a destroyer. One of the Scout logs.
Part of me is hoping that their next game has ties to this one. The gameplay is just too similar. I do realize it's developed by the same people, but usually gameplay similar like this is a sequel, and other games developed by the same people. Well, I don't know how you're ever going to tie this game to anything else, because this seems, again, just like some sort of like weird purgatory. I don't know how you could tie this, because it is such a personal story. It is about a woman's ambition and her ability to throw everything else away in life to get that. Right? I don't know how you tie that in with anything else, considering I don't think the planet's even real.
Also talks about how some of the wildlife reminds her of the creatures from her books, mainly Gorgons and Hydras, reinforcing a popular theory amongst the community that Celine's mind manifested the entirety of Atropos. It should also be mentioned, for the sake of thoroughness, that the astronaut is mentioned in these glyphs and archives too, but only by the name astronaut. So not only is this an actual entity on the planet, but it can be the Creator-Destroyer. All of this is great, but what's Chaos's role in all this? Well, outside of creating general chaos, it seems to also feast on pain, or at the very least the mind of the creature it consumes. To skip ahead, beating the final boss grants Celine access to the center of the planet, which she believes to be the core of the cycle here on Atropos. Touching this always plays the same cutscene of the crash, which we'll dissect later, but Chaos appears right at the end and seems to reach out to her. Following this, the player is then sent back to the beginning as if nothing happened. Glyph 6 says, "We saw countless arms reaching for the Creator-Destroyer, a creature we did not understand, but they were never satisfied even after countless feasts on its mind. By moving on, it could escape without suffering for eternity. My thinking is that this Celine that the Sentients observed was meeting with Chaos in multiple loops, and Chaos was feeding on her mind, which is how it's able to manifest these creatures on Atropos." Glyph 7 also mentions how the Severed shouldn't have followed the Creator-Destroyer, so it's possible that Celine's insistence on meeting with Chaos caused the aliens to get curious only for them to become severed. All of that is just my opinion and complete speculation on my part, but something to keep in mind is that Returnal is never going to provide a complete picture. Returnal is like a 1,000-piece puzzle, but if a manufacturing error occurred, resulting us only getting a fourth of the pieces, with the company not reimbursing us for the rest.
Okay.
So we have to put the pieces we have together and then figure out what the picture was supposed to be on our own. All the info in the game will never get us close to the full picture. It's a puzzle that can never be finished, like a loop that can never be broken. But you know, never say never, so we'll try our damnedest.
That's kind of frustrating, though. It is. That's what it kind of feels like. That's a little bit frustrating. So we watch the rest of this stuff. So what's the consensus of this supposed alien planet? Is she in a coma? Is she in purgatory? Is this all of her dreams and aspirations manifesting in an endless loop? I think she's dead and it's hell. Well, if you kill your mother and your son to achieve your dream job and you don't even get your dream job, then yeah, I think you're in hell. It's a curse. My version's more simple. Yeah, she's in hell. I believe she's dead. The reason I think she's dead, though, is because... Wait. So, we've concluded that she burned the house down, and we concluded that she drove the car off a bridge and tried to kill her son. When did she get the letter stating that she wasn't in? What was that weird letter? It was like, it explained the whole game. Literally summarized the entire game with Olympus. This one. I was rejected from Olympus, okay, by the family. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters, but there was no room for blood up in the stars. To me, this summarizes the whole game. Act 1 is the house, where she killed mom. Act 2 is the water, where she killed her son. 2, I believe. 1? How would that represent 1, though? I do, but the 2 segment, sure. I've never played the game. I'm only guessing based on what I've seen here. I don't blame you. I was rejected by Olympus. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters of the Wanatachi Styx, but there was no room for blood up in the stars. I buried and left them behind, but the astronaut was always following me. No. I would say that was, I was buried and left behind, or not, sorry, there was no room for me up in the stars. Rejected from Olympus, I'm assuming has to do with the family rejection, her mother hating her. And then from that, our family split apart. Or Olympus being, I don't know, the highest peak up in the stars or something. Olympus the job? But I thought there was no room for blood up in the stars. I thought she was rejected after she killed her son. I was rejected from Olympus. That's what I'm saying. It's like, when did that happen? But there was no room for blood up in the stars. I'm assuming blood is in, like, people. There was no room for my blood up in the stars. Like, I wasn't worthy enough of being in space. Our family split apart. I rose from the waters. It's like it's a literal timeline. Rejected by family or something. We then split apart. That's when she killed her mother. Our family split apart. She killed the mother. Olympus is referred as the realm of the gods. Maybe that was part of her ambition because of how she was denied. Well, I don't know. It's just so weird because, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm viewing it wrong. When did she get rejected is my question. Was this after or before she killed her kid? No room for blood up in the stars is her forgetting about her dead family. Well, I think that's the next line, though, stating, I buried and left them behind. Translation accuracy, 1%. I'm gonna say this game was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of thematics. Maybe it's the same thing in 2 sentences. Her forgetting about her past life, but the astronaut won't leave her. Yeah, exactly. She's trying to bury her past life, but she'll always want to be the astronaut, the spacefaring person that her mother was. Rating. What would you give? You know, I still don't understand the aliens. Are these supposed to be manifestations of her? I think that was, like, kind of the consensus from what I've read and what people were saying here. That's the weirdest part. How she ends up fighting all these aliens and things, I figured it was just kind of like representations of her. That's what I think, creator destroyer. This is a weird game to unpack because I feel like it's very, you know what it kind of reminds me of is like Alan Wake. It's like a plot within a plot, but it's like a lie. Everything is just so strange to try and, like, decipher and figure out. It's a complete turn. Silent Hill, but with aliens. The astronaut is a possible Celine. So it is following her normally regret, but in Returnal, it's actually an alternate Celine that makes a different choice. The astronaut is what I feel like she could have been. It's always following her. It's always behind her. Following, like, it's in the past. She can't do anything with that life now. That's at least how I view it. I don't think there was an alternate one. One second. It is very interpretive. I think with what we understand, I'm not entirely sure if I get all of it, but I do understand it more. It caused her to swerve on the bridge and ultimately kill her child, which is her ambition. Her being that astronaut is like, I assume it's like, hey, that's what I could become. If I have no more dead weight in my life keeping me back, that's what I could be. Yeah, you're good, peace, man. We're gonna finish up right now, because even I want to go eat, and Ivana has to go eat, and Mochi has to go out. What time is it? Yeah. I can ask Ivana. I think she might have taken Mochi, actually. A little bit late. So, I'm gonna say this game, I'm a little divisive. I think everything I learned with this, I was like, oh my god, that's so fucked up. But at the same time, I still have more questions than answers. Most of which stem from the alien side of things. I think understanding her life, her mother, her kid, I get it. Her aspirations to go into the stars and, you know, be an astronaut like her mother was, which Celine ruined her mother's chance, blah, 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 with the accident and everything. I feel like there's two things here, and I only know 50% of it. Gameplay 8, story 6. What would you guys rate this game? If you had to combine everything and give this game a rating, what would you give it? Absolutely everything. You'd give it a 7? An 8? A 7.58. I feel like an 8.5 is just a bit too far. I feel like most of that 8.5 probably stems from the gameplay side of things. Well, no, not really. Maybe not really. No, not true at all. It's pretty deep beyond that. It is pretty deep. I think in the way you deconstruct the game and figure everything out, it's a bit hard. Maybe I'm a dumbass. 8.5 is crazy. I mean, this game is so fun. This game was one of the most fun games I've played. And I was left wanting more, but they made you play the game again to get more. And that's not new stuff, that's rehashed stuff. I'm going to give this game, the consensus was a 7 to an 8.5. Most people sitting at 7. No, the gameplay and music and atmosphere is great. I don't think the story is too whack. I think it's very Remedy. It's very Sam Lake. It's very Alan Wakey, just like a plot within a plot, and it's just deconstructing it as a headache. But there is something unique there. Because I don't think I've seen anything like this in terms of like a woman literally killing her family to pursue her dream and then going insane. We're assuming she's insane. I think she's insane. And then everything kind of manifesting because of her consciousness, right, in what could have been. It's a simple story, but it's making it seem extremely deep. A little bit. I'm gonna give Returnal 5 gifted subs. That's what it's getting. It's getting 5 gifted subs. Oh my god. Westlake, thank you, sir. Yeah, it's getting 5. Not kidding. Yo, Westlake, thank you so much, man, for the 5 gifted. I'm gonna give Returnal an 8. I'm gonna give it an 8. It's a W. Yes, thank you, sir. I'm gonna give the game an 8. I think that's fair. I think this game is really good, man. Like, I think 7's too low. 7 for a game like this, 7 is too low. It's I had a lot of fun playing this game. I was just disappointed by the end of it, only because I wanted more. We beat this game in 2 days, yeah. This is an easy recommendation. Exactly. It's a fun game, but it's a story that I think you'd have to look into to really understand, unless you're into playing the game 50 times, reading every chat log, everything, every single thing. The deal, we didn't do the tower. No, we didn't do the tower. For me, it was definitely a top 5 game. I went into it knowing it was a roguelike, meaning it would have a lot of replayability of the same content to get the full unlock endings, but it's not for everyone due to how you initially couldn't put the game down and come back. You had to start over. So, I didn't, well, I'll say this. I didn't play the tower because I didn't want to grind it for content. I don't like the concept of a roguelike where you have to replay the game to unlock relevant things to a story. We beat the game, and what I think this game could have been better with was a 3rd chapter wrapping more things up. I feel like it was too short. You know, it isn't really fair to say, okay, play the game again, and go get the sigils, and you'll get the true ending. Because to do that, you have to play, I think, the game twice over. Maybe more, depending on what rooms you get, supposedly. And you have to not die, if I'm also not correct. Or if I'm correct. And I feel like, as cool of a concept as this is, it would have done better in just giving you a full story in one thing. Exactly. Unlocking a percentage per run is complete bullshit when it's the same thing. Collecting all the true ending stuff and the DLC story stuff is very RNG. That is, I can't play that, man. I just can't. If there's no story that isn't part of, like, I don't want to say linear, because I do like how this game is played and is structured, where each room is kind of shifting and blah, blah, blah. I just feel like games with such an interesting concept as this, you're stuck on an alien planet, what's going on? Now that we know what went on in Act 1 and 2 and her life, I think you could have just rounded out the game with one more chapter and said, okay, maybe I don't have to replay the game again to get the ending. But that's how they get you with roguelikes. They give you a short game, and then they rehash the game again. So they give you the same game twice, but say if you beat the game twice, you get the true ending. I just don't like that. I don't like that idea. I'm not a fan of that. Some people are, some people aren't. I don't think it makes a bad game. I just think it's a bit whack. But this was easily one of the most fun games with such a weird twist. At first, I was very content on it being an alien, like a Cthulhu, keeping you in this weird loop to kind of cope with something in your life. But it turns out it's the hell you've created yourself. Or supposedly with what we've seen and read. Weird game. I think you were spot on about the Lovecraftian creature playing with its food. We never really understood that, though. Like, did she actually become an astronaut? Maybe after? You know what was such an interesting thing? So, she had 2 normal eyes initially. You think the planet's real. Okay, let me say this. She had 2 normal eyes initially, and what ended up happening was supposedly through severe trauma, one of your pupils can change colors. Chaos was too similar to the alien version of her son's toy. Well, it has 4 eyes instead of 2. Trauma-induced, and so there's almost, well, let me say this. There's like 2 parts of her. You have the normal eyes before she gets into the accident, and then after the accident, she gets the eyes. Right? But it also shows up that, oh, maybe she drowned. So where do those eyes come from? Weird, man. Weird game, and I think the guy was right. Only the devs really know what the fuck is going on. And I think they might never tell you, so there's more talk about the game, but the game is good. The game is very, very, very good. Heterochromia, yeah. Interesting, man. Interesting game. I'm going to give this game an 8. Like, genuinely a good game, but also a bit of a headache to kind of decipher, and I'm still not conclusive on everything, but I feel like most people with this game, it's just up to interpretation. Is it not? Has anyone in this chat room beaten this game and 100% felt certain in what they've thought about it, story-wise? Because I think it is more of an interpret for, like, most of the game. But once you understand her story, like, that's concrete. Mochi. My interpretation was that she came to a planet and ended up trapped in the loop. The planet warped around her because she was basically immortal. She was immortal for what reason, though? Because the creature? I mean, I don't know if I believe... I don't know if she even came to this planet. Well, let me say this. Returnal is getting an 8. Hell no, I watched a YouTube video. The creature, you know what? I want to believe that the alien is real, but there is also that parallel, as someone said, to the squid. That's I want to believe that, but, like, it could also just be elements of her past life manifesting in a weird way that would have aligned with, like, what she wanted out of life. Returnal is getting an 8. Solaris is a sci-fi classic about a planet that makes stuff from people's subconscious. I think that is what this is. It could be. It could be. Heavy Rain's going to be soon. The next game, I think we're just going to play Cabin Factory and then Heavy Rain. The only thing that doesn't make sense is the space tech versus the car she was driving. You're not wrong. The space tech that she had was, like, infinitely more advanced than her little shit buggy. Cyberpunk and Cyberpunk DLC, I think I gave a 9.5. It should be on this list. You should be able to see it somewhere here. You're not wrong. The car, yeah, you're not wrong. People are saying it's a spiritual successor, not really a sequel, right? I don't know how you would make this game attached to anyone else unless this planet was real and there was another person that came to it and it, like, manifested their trauma. Which, that could be a theory, but I'm just gonna say she's fucking insane. And I think that's an easy thing to get when you kill your mother for your job, you burn her alive, and then you try to drown your child, which you do, you succeed. I think she's insane. So weird. It kind of does remind me of Silent Hill. If that was the case, it's a Silent Hill planet. Yeah, I don't think I believe that then. I don't think I believe that then. I think the biggest thing, oh man, this is so weird. This is a weird one. There was a cutscene at the very end of this game where it shows you trying to save your kid with regrets, and you swim towards the moon, right? You swim towards the waterline, but it doesn't look like you've made it. It looks like you drowned. In the second ending, you reach the surface. Does it show that, though? I mean, I guess with this page alone, it literally says, I rose from the waters of the Okanogan. Rose from the waters, so maybe you did make it. Yeah, it was a cutscene. It's not this one. It's not in this video. It cuts to black and then says Helios as she's up from the water. What is that? Returnal. Is it the car crash scene?
I will go there now,
1 sec.
as you will.
Is it this ending?
The White Shadow.
That bitch is dead. She's dead. But see, that's the thing. It kind of, we saw that other ending. It kind of shows she makes it to the surface, but the entire screen whites out. Did she actually make it? I don't know. I mean, this whole sequence, she's trying to kill her son. This we know. I mean, the kid even looks fucking scared for his life. And then, of course, with the mirror.
Do you see the White Shadow?
She hates him. There was the cutscene. Yeah, we saw all that stuff. We figured that, okay, so what I interpreted it as was that the astronaut was her aspirations. If you swerve off this road and kill your son, that's what it could be. That's what's waiting for you. That's at least what I thought initially. Because she is the astronaut. She hates her son. I mean, this alone, right?
The White Shadow.
Yeah, they did. They both wanted to go to space. We did beat the game. I gave this game an 8. The lowest I would be is a 7.75. But I think 8 is totally valid. The Styx entry could have also referred to the first car crash. Possibly. Possibly. What's up with this weird fucking alien, this chaos guy? I also would like to think that, like, she ended up becoming an astronaut after all of this, and she ended up on an alien planet, and this creature was playing with it, like, was playing with her. San Francisco, hello, sir. 3 months, thank you, man. Mass Effect is on the list, yeah. It could be, or it could just be a pile of nonsense, and the aliens and the civilization and all that stuff could be bullshit. It goes one way or the other, and we don't know. The only concise thing is she's a crazy bitch. She's a lot like her mother, and she tried to sacrifice everyone in her life for her ambition of becoming an astronaut. It is up for interpretation. I prefer the planet being real with aliens as well. Yes, I agree. I 100% agree that would be cool as shit. Yeah. Oh, this is on Earth. There's no entity here. No, this is Earth. She ends up on an alien planet, completely separated from Earth, like way gone. Well, that creature in that show was a little bit nicer than this guy. Well, folks, I think we're going to stop here for Returnal. Very interesting game. Very crazy protagonist, who could also be the antagonist, I suppose. I would recommend this game. This shit is fun as fuck. If you like Dark Souls, I highly suggest you play this game. It is precise. It is fun as fuck. This was one of the few games where I was like, I instantly want to wake up and play this shit 24/7. Not that other games didn't have that, but like, I was so addicted to the idea of one life, one run, alien planet, creepy story. That's kind of what drove me to like lock the fuck in. Because if you die, you restart the mission. You effectively only have 2 saves. 1, after you beat 50% of the game. 2, after you beat the other 50% of the game. It is very immersive. I really like the art direction. The sound is phenomenal. The rain, the guns, everything about this game oozes quality. It's just the story is a little bizarre. Like, this game is cool as shit, man. I would recommend this as well. If you've liked Dark Souls, I guess if you like roguelikes, I like roguelikes. I've played Slay the Spire, Hades. What's the one with the planet and the Marines? It's like co-op, and there's classes. Risk of Rain, we played Risk of Rain. And we also played that other game that was... What was that game? What was the game with Leshy? What was that weird-ass fucking card game? Because that was a roguelike as well. Except I feel like that game, Inscription. But Inscription, I feel like, had a better, concisive, like, rounded story. Not concisive. Inscription was a load of fucking fent. What a weird story. But I was satisfied more so with how it was structured and how it gave you story. Where, like, if Returnal had one more chapter, it would be perfect. If Returnal had one more chapter, it'd probably be like an 8.59. Easily, if it had one more chapter. Anyways, that is it for Returnal, folks. Great game. Genuinely great game. And I would recommend it if you're a fan of, like, CBT. Because this game is CBT. I think we beat it pretty fast, in all honesty. There were people saying they took... some guy said it was like a month. Other people said they were hard stuck for a while. We beat this game in 2 days. We didn't do all of the crazy, beat the game 5 more times, get the content 5 more times. We didn't do that. That's kind of why I wish there was one more chapter to round everything out before they gave you, it's a roguelike, play the game again to get the final picture. That's a bit of bullshit. But yeah. So, with that being said, favorite weapon and boss? Favorite boss. Favorite weapon is maybe the assault rifle and, like, the laser gun where you shoot the spikes into the ground and it, like, zaps things. The organ was creepy as shit. That was supposedly her father. And again, how does that lump into anything? Weird. That I'm not sure. I kind of like descending into the bottomless pit and fighting, like, the weird Cthulhu Kraken thing. The Witcher's coming up, yeah. But anyways, that is it for Returnal, folks. We will see you next time for a brand new game. Highly recommend this. Honestly, great game. So with that being said, take care, YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you guys for the next game. Peace, peace.